Good morning. My name is Mark Baldassare, and I'm the President and CEO of the Public Policy Institute of California. Thank you for joining us today. PPIC is pleased to present this virtual program with Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The event is part of PPIC's 2020 Speaker Series on California's future. As part of this series, PPIC is inviting elected leaders across the political spectrum to participate in public conversations about the important issues and challenges facing California today. We'd like to thank our sponsors for this series for their underwriting, and these organizations are listed on your screen and on our website. Please consider joining PPIC as a sponsor or donor so that we may continue to make programs like today's possible. More information is available at ppic.org. Before we begin, if you have a question for Speaker Pelosi, please send an email to the email address on the screen, ppicevents questions@gmail.com. We would appreciate you including your name and organization along with your question. Today's program comes at an unparalleled challenge for time of unparalleled challenge for the state and the nation. We're so pleased to have Speaker Nancy Pelosi here to talk about these challenges. Speaker Pelosi was elected to the House of Representatives in 1987, has led the House Democrats since 2003, and is currently the 52nd Speaker. Thank you for being here today, Speaker Pelosi. My first question is, thank you. My first question is, what is the role of the federal government in managing the COVID-19 pandemic and related upheaval? And how can the federal government work more effectively with state leaders to address these challenges?
Well, again, thank you for the invitation to be with you. It's always a pleasure. Again, thank you for your focus on the future for our great state of California. California, of course, is always a model to the nation. We are the intellectual resource in so many ways. And now we are hit with this pandemic in our whole country. And I do believe that our governor and our mayor have really been exemplary in their leadership. So the role of federal government is one that is big. It's big in terms of policy, in terms of finances, and in terms of just example. We haven't succeeded in all of those. We have had 4 bills which have been bipartisan to address the COVID-19 crisis, but we haven't had the implementation of the policy contained in those bills put forth. So I think the best example of what we think the federal role is for me to talk to you about the HEROES Act, which is a bill that we passed in a couple of days, 3 months ago. 3 months ago on Friday, we passed the HEROES Act. It was so named because of the state and local employees, our healthcare workers, our first responders, our transit workers, teachers, food supply, sanitation, whatever it is, people who are delivering services to the people of our country, and in our case, to the great state of California and our communities in the Bay Area. We wanted to make sure that state and local governments, which were putting outlays to fight the virus, were being compensated for that, and also that they would be compensated for revenue lost because of that. We thought that was the appropriate role of the federal government. Next pillar was if you want to open the economy, end the virus. And that is testing, tracing, treating, mask wearing, distancing, again, sanitation, and the rest. We don't have a vaccine, God willing, and science producing. We will have one soon, but we don't know that. But we do now have the tools that, if implemented 4 months before, would have saved us. In the time since we passed this bill 3 months ago, over 3 million people have been added to the list of those infected with the virus. And 70,000 people have died since we introduced this bill. The Republicans, just to tell you the facts here, press the pause button. They said, we're pausing, we need a pause. They came back last week with a piecemeal suggestion. Today, in this very room where I'm sitting now, and within the hour, we'll be having a conversation about how we reconcile our differences on that. But the third pillar, first pillar, honor our heroes, state and local government. Second, end the virus, open the economy, open our schools safely by ending the virus. Third pillar, put money in the pockets of the American people. That's one of the debates we're having about the $600. But putting that money into the hand is about shoring up our economy as we shore up America's working families. Very important. There are people in our country, children, millions of children are food insecure. Millions of families are rent insecure and in fear of eviction. Tens of millions of people have filed for unemployment insurance. So we really do need the federal government to put that money in the pockets of the American people. We have other issues that relate to, again, food, that's part of the money thing, the postal system, as well as our elections. So we're talking about the lives, the livelihood, and the life of our democracy. We see the federal government as having to play a very substantial role in how we address all of that.
So thank you, Speaker Pelosi. Californians have questions about where we are in terms of managing the pandemic right now, and trying to gauge a sense of what you think are going to be the key challenges over the next 3 months, and where do you think we'll be by the beginning of next year in terms of managing the pandemic?
Well, let me just say one more thing, because you specifically were talking about California. In our bill, in the HEROES Act, when we talk about state and local government, what we have in the bill, and you don't have to take it from me, just go to speaker.gov/HEROES Act. Mm-hmm. And at that place, you will find what is in the bill for state and local government all mm-hmm. over the country, mm-hmm. and tribal governments as well as territories. In it, we have, for California, $50 billion over 2 years, and that addresses the outlays and the revenue lost. It will also keep people from being fired who will go on unemployment. So what money are we saving there? Yeah. And then for the city of San Francisco, $1.8 billion. $1.8 billion. Now, that much counties, townships, cities, the state, of course, you go look there and see, anybody who's watching from outside the city of San Francisco, what is there. And then, of course, if you want to talk about where you came from, where you went to school, and all the rest, you'll see the rest of the country. This is essential. This is essential because if the counties don't, cities and counties, municipalities don't have that money, they're going to be firing people. So in terms of California, it was interesting to me, they asked me yesterday, they said, oh, what do you think? California has the most cases. I said, well, California has the most people. California has the most people, and California has managed this well. And so we're watching to see how things open up, and they can only open up with the reduction in the infection in the community that we're talking about, whether that means schools or other aspects of the community. And it requires a good scientific basis for it. It's science to tell us what works and what we should be doing, and governance to require us to do it. It's two things that some of my colleagues have some difficulty with, but science and governance will be our path as to how we go out. And of course, our state being so big, since this was a California specific question, our state being so big that we have diversity within our state in terms of geography and density and the rest. So I do think that some of that diversity, which was clamoring for more opening up, maybe led to the what is happening now. Right. But I think it has, my goodness, the governor and in our case, the mayor in our city, but other mayors as well, and county executives have done a science-based governance approach to all of this.
Yeah. I'm sure that you've been watching the trends in California, both in terms of the public health and the economy. And there's no question that this pandemic is having an outsized impact on communities of color. And so I'm wondering how you think about the response of new legislation that will impact communities of color in California who have been hit the hardest, both by the virus as well as unemployment.
Well, in all of our legislation, we have tried to, well, we have insisted, but we haven't gotten the results all that we wanted so far, to insist that there be data collected as to what the impact is of the virus, especially on communities of color, because they have been underserved. In the HEROES Act, we specifically, in our strategic plan for testing, tracing, treatment, we have specific addressing of the undue impact on communities of color. And communities of color have not had the same access to testing that others may have had. And again, once you are tested, we need to be traced, and our minority caucuses have been very specific about wanting the tracers who go in to be of the community, so that there's a link, a cultural attachment, even if it's also linguistic, as to how we remove obstacles of communication in terms of finding out about that. But this is, I mean, it is a challenge to the conscience of our country that communities of color, including our Native American populations, have not had the same kind of access. Sometimes they're not in the same healthcare loop that would draw them in. Other times it's just, we don't have enough testing material, so we're taking these first and those first. And we're just saying we should have more equipment. We should not have communities of color, of any color, not well served because we don't have the equipment. And we don't have the equipment for PPE to protect people as they care for others. We don't have the equipment to test, and we don't have the equipment to get the results of the test. That's why we're calling on the president to say, because of these disparities and beyond that, we need you to implement the Defense Production Act, which will full steam ahead produce enough equipment to protect, to test, and to get the results of the test. We haven't had success with that. But when I posed the testing and data gathering with some of my colleagues here, they were like, do you know how hard that would be? I said, well, do you know how hard it would be without that to pass a bill on the floor of the House? So this is a priority for us, and I thank you for asking that question.
Yes.
The beautiful diversity of my caucus, 60% of our caucus, women, people of color, LGBTQ.
Yes. And that leads me to another topic which has been on the minds of Californians and really the nation as a whole, as we have been really directly confronting some of the long-standing racial disparities and injustice that takes place in our country. And I'm wondering what role you think federal leadership can play. And in particular, can you tell us about where we are in terms of the police reform bill?
Yes, the police reform bill we're very proud of. We passed it about 1 month from the day that George Floyd left us. Again, our conscience, the conscience of our nation was challenged by seeing this man really murdered in front of our very eyes. It's so sad. But under the leadership of Karen Bass, the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, who also chairs in the Judiciary Committee, the Crime Subcommittee, we were able to put together, working with Kamala Harris and Cory Booker in the Senate, our communities of color taking the lead, but also everyone very interested in it. We put together the Justice in Policing Act, respectful of our men and women in uniform who do their jobs with respect for the people they serve, but recognizing that we need to have justice in policing because the brutality is completely intolerable. And it's a very important bill. Now, I met with Karen yesterday to see what the possibilities were in the Senate from her vantage point about whether they could come up with a bill that we could go to conference on. But so far what they had put forth was, for example, we say no chokeholds, they say only under certain circumstances. They say we should have a database about police brutality. We say that, they say that, but they say it shouldn't be transparent and available to the public. So they pull the punch every time. So although they have some of the same vocabulary, it's more rhetoric than results oriented. And that's the conversation we're in. But Karen is very optimistic and the bill that was written and passed. Now, when George Floyd's brother came to testify about the bill before the Judiciary Committee, and I greeted him before he went to the committee, he said, "Madam Speaker, do you think this really has a chance to pass?" And I said, "I do. The American people want this to happen." And then he said, "Well, do you think that for my brother's daughter, for her, do you think it could be named for him?" So I said, "Well, we will name it for him if you think the bill is worthy of your brother." He said he did, hence the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. It's a kind of emotional.
Yes, very much so. Recently, the passing of Congressman John Lewis took place, and lots been said about his exemplary life. And having served with him, is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, well, I served with him for 33 years.
Wow.
We're classmates way back when. We were both sworn in 1987. A few months later because of a special election, but for 33 years we were very good friends. And as I said to him, I went to visit him over 4th of July and said, his passing was going to be like a death in the family. He said, "I'm more thinking of the nearly 150,000, at that time it was nearly, this was 3 weeks ago, 150,000 people in our country who have a death in the family from this virus. We have to give them consolation, and we have to mourn their loss as well." But he was beautiful, and as I said, at his funeral, when he died, the flags were flown over the Capitol. The flags were waving goodbye to him as his soul was going to heaven, his passage. And the last day he was here for lying in state, he was outside, because that's where he was lying in state for people to visit. Thousands of people visited for no reason, because there was no rain. There was a double rainbow over the Capitol, a double rainbow. And it was as if John said, "You waved goodbye to me before, now I'm saying goodbye to you. I'm home in heaven." And we want him to rest in peace. But he was so remarkable, so saintly, such a beautiful person.
Yeah, so inspiring. Speaker Pelosi, we're getting some questions in from our audience, and one is about the November election. We do have an election, and I'm wondering about how you're thinking about the election and the election process, and talk about delaying the election, the post office, and so forth. So what are you watching about this election?
Well, let me say this because it relates to California, because we're so diverse and beautiful in that respect. And so there are three things that you talked about too: the post office and the election, et cetera. And I will add a third to that: the census. So these are three issues that, when you look at our $3.4 trillion budget, and we know we have to cut it back, these are not dollar-wise big figures, but they are values-wise very significant. And we're having shall we say, a back and forth with the administration, because for reasons only known to I don't know who, they decided recently that they were going to cut off a month of the door knock for the census. Supposed to end October 31st. Just they made an announcement it's going to be September 30th. We are very unhappy with that. And we also want to extend the time it takes to do the reapportionment figures, so that there's more time because of the coronavirus. We need more time for the door knock for sure. We don't need less time. That doesn't make sense to me. And so it's all related to how we are represented in our country. The Constitution says that we will have a census every 10 years to count who is in our country. We already defeated them in the Supreme Court when they said it had to be the number of citizens in our country, no, the number of people in our country. So that's one thing. Then, yes, we will have election. It will not be postponed. And this is a diversionary tactic on the part of who, just to say, talk about this, and then you won't be talking about the fact that 150-some thousand people now have died of the coronavirus. And even though I'm doing such a great job, it will be held then. And the important part of it that relates to the post office is the vote by mail. This is really important. I used to be chair of the party over 30 years ago, over 33 years ago. And I know that on election day, when the Republican vote by mail would come in, it would always be kind of bad news for us because that's when they would do their best. So for them to make it sound as if we want vote by mail because it's to our advantage, it isn't. It's to the health of people, so they don't have to go into polling places or wait in long lines and have proximity that could be because of the coronavirus injurious to their health. And it's also about the health of our democracy. People, we have to remove obstacles of participation for people to be able to vote. If they want to vote in a polling place, in our bill, we talk about how it should be safe and how it should, therefore you need more because you need more space. And that's all spelled out. But in terms of the vote by mail, when I leave you here, I'll be meeting with the Postmaster General, Chuck Schumer and I, and the Secretary, Mr. Mehta. And we want an accountability because he's been removing overtime, the slowing down of mail and the rest since he came in. The post office has never been political. It's overwhelmingly popular, over 90% all the time favor the post office. The rain or sleet or snow, the dark of night, well, you know the expression.
Yeah.
People need that and they respect that. And now in time of coronavirus, when people are needing their medicines and all the rest, they're reining in the service. So we're not happy with that, but we're willing to listen to see what he has to do to address it. This is a new Postmaster General. I'm not going into that, but what we have in the HEROES Act is what the bipartisan Board of Governors of the Postal Service recommended. They are bipartisan, 100% appointed by Donald Trump. So this isn't anything partisan. This is what they recommended. This is what the Republicans are rejecting, but that's the debate we're having. But again, it relates directly. If you have a stamped envelope, it has to be postmarked. If you have a postage paid mailing, it doesn't. So they could let it sit around for days. And they do because they are pulling back on overtime. We said, if you don't want to do overtime, just hire more people.
Yeah.
But you cannot say that the mail will not go through in a timely fashion because you just don't want to have the staffing to do it.
Okay, that sounds very important. In 2016, issues around foreign interference, is that a concern? And what is Congress doing about it?
It is a concern. And I'm right now in a back and forth with some of the intelligence community because we do know that they have information that should be available to the American people, not sources and methods or anything to jeopardize anything, but they know more about the Russian involvement in our elections than they have been willing to tell the American people. So Adam Schiff, our distinguished chair of intelligence, Chuck Schumer and I as leaders, Adam Schiff and Senator Warner, who is the top Democrat on intelligence, have sent a letter to them saying, you owe it to the American people. American people should be deciding who our president is, not Vladimir Putin. And we know from open sources, nothing behind the scenes, that from the intelligence community that 24/7 the Russians are active in our election, as they were 2016. They've really never stopped.
And what about the role of social media in elections? How are you thinking about that?
Well, the two subjects are connected because the Republicans have gone rampantly through our social media. And really, I think that like Facebook, for example, they ignore all that they knew was coming from Russia in the 2016 election. They just never bothered to think it was. If you have a business model that is just to make money, no matter what the truth is or what it's about. Now, the one thing that we have an advantage over 2016 is that we're so much more on top of it than was happening then. And so everyone is very vigilant. But they had their bots and they exploit with misrepresentations and lies. Right now they have me drunk. I've never drank alcohol, but but they had me drunk again on Facebook, and they said they're not taking it down. So again, our platforms sometimes are complicit. They especially are the worst. But we're trying to. Last time they exploited the African American community with these false messages and the rest, where everybody is inoculated against a good deal of that. I'm not saying that the Black community fell for it. I'm just saying that's what they tried. So the social media is important in a positive way. It's a double-edged sword in certain respects when it comes to election. It enables you to communicate with people in the manner in which they receive information. It could be the newspapers, it could be radio, it could be television, it could be mail, whatever it is, but it also is the social media. But it also has its dangers, and to the extent that we are vigilant and inoculating against their poison, we can be in better shape this time. But they'll try anything. They'll change the date, no vote by mail. You don't want me to go down that path, I don't think. Okay.
Speaker Pelosi, I wanted to come back to the census. We have a question from one of our members of our audience, Christina Arana, who's from the Latino Community Foundation, asking about the Trump administration's announcement to end the census count 1 month early. We talked about that earlier, but coming back to that, what can we do in terms of census provisions that will help make sure that we have an accurate census this year? We only do it once every 10 years.
I know. Well,
I got it right.
The Constitution says, and as I said before, they try to limit it to citizens and all that. But Christina, thank you for your question. Here's what the conversation we're having here, and we'll continue in a little while. Under the law, under the statute, you must have 99%. And when the 99% is achieved, then you can stop the door knock. You can stop the door knock. This is about the door knock, this removing the date, pulling the date back from October 31st to September 30th. So if you have 99% at the end of September, okay, then you achieve the statute, the requirement of the statute. If you don't, that has to be extended until October. It just has to be. And so they have said, well, of course, if it isn't achieved, then you have to go forward. But we said we have to make sure that we have it written in law that if it isn't achieved, that we go forward. I don't know if they will agree with that, if the president will sign it, but we'll certainly make a big fuss about it. But isn't it unbelievably sad that in all of this time where they try to scare people and the rest, and we're trying to get as many people to sign up again. This isn't, of course it's about reapportionment, and that's why we had standing in court on the subject as Congress, but it's much more than that. It's about services and about how we meet the needs of people, and you have to know how many there are and where they are in order to do that, and to understand the beautiful diversity of America through the census and the rest. So it was really even for them, this was really mean-spirited, but we're fighting them on it. And suffice to say, if we don't have 99% by the end of September, we'll have the month of October. But it shouldn't even have to be this frightening a thing. And in our community and in communities across the country where I visit with beautifully diverse populations, it makes you sad because we value these people. Obviously, this is the constant reinvigoration of America, newcomers who come, and that's who they don't want to be counted in large measure, unfortunately. Yeah. And so we're fighting that fight. And I thank you, Christina, for your organization and others, because the organizations have been magnificent. They have the confidence of the people we want to count. They have more of a connection than any bureaucrat or whatever else. And so the success of our census is really overwhelmingly dependent on your activities. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. And I thank you for your leadership on this topic. One of the questions that came in was about in this year of pandemic and economic crisis, whether there are any other priorities that you have as the speaker in terms of bills that we might see. People mention in California, homelessness and housing's been a top issue, immigration reform, DACA, climate change and energy policy. In our latest poll, we saw that for the first time, Californians naming global warming as the most important environmental issue. And
That's great.
how are you thinking about other legislative priorities with the crisis that we're in?
Well, thank you for asking that question, because our committees have been churning away legislation, and we've been very active on the floor. We bring members back and then we vote them morning until night every day and that.
Mm-hmm.
And three priorities that we fall under an umbrella that contain many things. First, when we ran in 2018 and won, it was on a platform that said, for the people, we would lower the cost of healthcare by lowering the cost of prescription drugs and preserving the pre-existing condition. For the people, lower healthcare costs, bigger paychecks by building infrastructure of America in a green way. For the people, we would have cleaner government, and we introduced HR 1, which is about lowering, eliminating dark special interest money and enhancing the people's interest rather than the special interest. John Lewis had his legislation in there, which is to end voter suppression. We had the Voting Rights Act, issues like that. So within the past month, the most recent bills that we have passed were the enhancement of the Affordable Care Act to make it less expensive, more accessible, lowering the cost of prescription drugs, and that very important legislation. Secondly, we did our Moving Forward bill, which is the infrastructure bill, and that has a great deal of the green initiatives that we had in our green task force proposal. It's fabulous, and it's great for California. And then three, we had for the people. In that overarching category, we had the Police Justice and Policing Act. We will have more election things as we get closer to the election, but that was the urgent matter at the time. Now, when we win, this is what we've been doing now. And when we win, we have our top 10, which contain some of these. HR 1 is cleaner government. HR 2 is the infrastructure bill. HR 3, lower healthcare costs. But after that, we have the DACA, the DREAM Act, and it's called Promise. It's about Dreamers and other TPS and the rest of that. But we would hope to pass that this year, but we will have it as a version of comprehensive immigration reform just a matter of months from now under a Democratic president. And then we have 5, which is the Equality Act, ending discrimination any place, LGBTQ community. After that, we have the Climate Action Now legislation, which is more specifically about climate. Then we have gun safety, that is the background checks legislation, and also the South Carolina loophole that we closed on that. We have legislation that relates, and you get the point. It's all priorities that we have, and that is what we promise we will do. We have specific legislation in each of those categories. I don't know if I'm looking in the right place here.
No, you are. And I'm glad that you mentioned those, because so much of what we hear is the work that's going on COVID-19. And I just wanted to, on the behalf of our audience, get a sense of what some of the other priorities are. But I would like to come back to where the point at which we started, which was talking about the ongoing work to have a new bill that will address both the pandemic and the economy. And can you give us a sense of where we are in terms of those negotiations, points of agreement and disagreement, prospects of a deal, and so forth?
Well, I told you what our priorities are in the bill. So basically, let's think of it in terms of people sitting around their kitchen tables. And that's really what our priority is. Not the boardroom table, the kitchen table of families. Children are hungry, we have to feed them. Families are fearing eviction, we have to make sure that doesn't happen. So housing, and the housing is big in our infrastructure bill, as is education there. So they don't want to, just to give you an update on it, they don't want to do state and local. They don't want to do state and local. I don't know why they don't want to do state and local. Governors, mayors, county executives from around the country want us to do state and local, Democrats and Republicans. They don't want to do state and local. In terms of testing, the president says it's overrated. But we're saying it's not overrated. It's absolutely essential. And they don't necessarily believe in tracing. Why should we trace? So I think we can find a place to be. We have to. In terms of putting money in people's pockets, our big fight, we want $600. $600. They're begrudging people $600 where they're giving tax cuts to the wealthiest people in our country, burdening future generations with enormous debt. But any of it, that's kind of the difference between the parties. And so post office, they were very resistant. Vote by mail, they say they're never going to do. They just don't know it yet. And what is the other? Oh, the food. We have $67 billion for food, one way or another. School, food stamps, WIC, women, infant, and children, all this in our bill. They have $7 billion. They have $250,000. So we're far apart on some of these things. I'm sure we'll get them to get to that place. One big place that we are apart is on safety in the workplace. We are insisting on a big OSHA legislation that protects workers and actually protects employers, because if you have a clean workplace, you are less likely to have people be sick and that. So it is, we have some differences, but we have to get to a place and we'll go back. Now we do both agree that we should have something more for small businesses, but only if we give some priority to small businesses, women, minority-owned businesses, instead of having the same businesses come in, double dip, and that's okay. There are many successes with PPP, but not enough for us at the smaller businesses, women and minority-owned businesses.
So Speaker Pelosi, maybe you can help explain this for us. You've been Speaker twice. You were involved in negotiations during the Great Recession that we had more than 10 years ago. Normally when we think about negotiations for a legislative bill, we think about the four legislative leaders sitting down and working things out and talking then with the president's staff with this. And this seems to be a different format. And can you explain that for us?
Well, here's the thing. This is a different set of negotiations ever. Chuck Schumer and I are experienced legislators. We know that when you have a priority that you want to translate into legislation, the devil or the angels are in the details. And so that's how we come to the table. In all negotiations, you have a time frame, you have a dollar amount that you might stipulate to, and the rest. This is different from any negotiation ever, because people are dying. People are dying. 3 months ago, we passed this bill and they pressed pause. So you see a difference in urgency here. Now they've come back with a bill, but we have passed a bill 3 months ago, I reiterate, on the floor of the House, bipartisan. They have nothing. They can't pass a bill in the Senate. Even if it were just 51 votes, they can't pass a bill in the Senate. So we're not as exactly coming to the table with my caucus wants this, yours wants that. So it is a different negotiation. And the reason we're negotiating with the president's folks is because he has the signature.
I see.
There'll never be a bill unless it meets our requirement as the House Democrats. And we hope that now Senator McConnell has now said that he's receptive to the $600, that he's opening up, because we have to have a bill. And they are completely standing in the way of it because they can't pass a bill on the Senate floor. Because say near 40% of their members have said they're not voting for anything. They don't think we should do one more. So he subtracts 15, 20 of them right off the bat. He has 32 or 33 left, and they're not all on the same page. So you asked the question about how to make sausage, and here it is, is the answer.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, people think of, oh, you negotiate, you trade this or that. No, how do you write it? How do you get the votes for it? You can't, we are representatives of our caucus of the American people about their concerns. It's not about, let's just get this done and get out of here. Too much is at stake. We've never had one where so many lives were at stake. As I say, the lives, the livelihood, and the life of our democracy is at stake. And we're going to get a decent bill, and hopefully soon.
Thanks. I want to be respectful of your time, and I know that you have another appointment that you need to go to, but I do want to ask this one question, really on behalf of all of us in California. You know, given your time and leadership, and the fact that for many people today, it's hard to think about any positives given the unprecedented challenges that the state and nation are facing. So what gives you hope as you think about the rest of 2020?
What gives me hope are the people on the street. That is the most encouraging thing. Behind me is President Lincoln, and he said, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. But to see all of those people turn out day in and day out, week in and week out, and to see the women the day after the inauguration come out that next day spontaneously, none of this organized, all that's spontaneous and organic, that the people know their power, that they know that their presence makes a difference, and they continue to turn out. It's just the most invigorating thing, because inside we can maneuver all we can, but the outside mobilization makes everything better. And that's what gives me hope.
Speaker Pelosi, I really appreciate your time today. Is there anything you want to say before you leave us?
Yes, God bless California. We live in, it's heaven on earth in so many respects, but also intellectually, the hotbed of environmental justice, early on, everything that we talk about, saving the planet, individual rights and liberties, taking great pride, not tolerating anything, but taking pride in respecting our beautiful diversity, including our LGBTQ community, which we have led the way on. I mean, it's a state that is so fabulous in every way. God blessed us with beautiful nature. God bless us as able to receive so many people from all over the world to invigorate America, to demonstrate the beautiful diversity of our country, and to absorb so much of that, and to have the benefit of the thinking of all of those people. So again, naturally, intellectually, politically, in every way, God has blessed America with the great state of California. That's what I think.
Speaker Pelosi, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much for your leadership. And we really appreciate learning from you directly what's in store for us over the next few months. And we wish you all the best. Take care, stay safe and healthy. And
thank you, Mark, and thank you for your long-term commitment to presenting a California perspective. It's an honor to be with you again and again. Thank you so much.
And likewise. Take care. So I would also like to thank our sponsors, and finally, thanks to all of you for joining us today online. If you pre-registered for this event later today, you will be receiving a survey, and we hope you'll take a few minutes to fill it out. Our next virtual speaker series event is just 2 days from now. On Friday, August the 7th, from 11 a.m. to noon, we will be meeting with Senate Pro Tem Tony Atkins. And we very much look forward to that session as well. And then a week from then, on August the 14th, also a Friday from 11 a.m. to noon, we'll be talking with the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond. So thanks once again for joining us today. And please be safe and have a good afternoon. Thank you.